The burden of supporting Kenya's retired public servants is set to get heavier on taxpayers, with one-term members of parliament who failed to retain their seats in the last election expected to pocket 18.8 million shillings payoff. Now, this means Kenyans will have to part with 1.79 billion shillings in the next financial year, as compared to 262 million shillings in the current financial year. The move by MPs to increase the legislators' retirement dues is contained in a motion that was passed last year. Now, this figure is expected to hit 2.7 billion shillings in 3 years' time, putting a strain on the already bulging country wage bill. And welcome back to News Center. Thank you very much for staying with us. And remember that top story is also the basis of our Twitter interaction this morning. We're asking you if you think one-term MPs deserve that pension increment. And of course, from what we're getting, almost 100% of the answers saying no, they do not deserve that. Let me just sample one or two tweets here. Ekale Josephat, you say, it's very unfortunate, I beg your pardon, MPs given that extreme pensions while we students are at home due to lecturers' strike. Rono Arnold, you say, Kenya is a man-eat-man society. Despite our struggling economy, we get monies to care for those in power. Keep your comments coming, and of course, we'll continue to sample them as we move along here on the show. All right, coming back to my discussion, and we had invited a member of parliament. I won't say who it is, but all right, I understand that still he's not available for, for this discussion. I wonder why. And before I get to indulge Jarvis, let me also invite your calls. We have the numbers on your screen there. If you want to interact with us, chime in into this conversation. Apart from Twitter, you can also just give us a call. Let us know what you think, what your thoughts are as a Kenyan with regard to this 707% increment of pensional benefits. Let's hear your voice as a Kenyan. What do you have to say about that? Call us on those numbers at the bottom end of your screen, and I'll receive your call this morning here on News Center. So, Jarvis, coming back to you, I mean, this means that our wage bill, that is already too big, for the country to bear, is definitely going to even explode. I don't even know what are the words I can use to describe that. Aren't members of parliament and legislators really alive to this fact?
Well, they seem not to be alive to that fact. And it seems from their perspective, our wage bill is eternally elastic. And if that is their thinking, then it is inverse to the reality. And by the example of what I cited earlier about the recommendations by SRM, for instance, before their term expired, it was to save Kenya about 8.8 billion shillings annually. And look at, practically speaking, look at the number of Kenyans in their thousands that go to India for treatment or medical attention of whatever kind, and other countries, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in Germany, etc. When our leaders are blind to such kind of realities, when you look at how schools are struggling to put up infrastructure, all right, and yet we see this happening, when we do not have members of parliament who respect even just having such kind of proposals kept. And I think maybe moving forward, for purposes of public debate, it would be important for us to say and suggest and have it in law that such kind of increases, whether it's pension or whether it's salaries, if it can only be revised upwards maybe after a 15-year period. But this idea of members of parliament adjusting upwards their salaries, pensions, etc., anytime they feel like it is to give up on reason. And actually, we must not be against the privilege of thinking and reason itself. When we speak like this, when anger is demonstrated from every Kenyan and by every Kenyan, yet these leaders represent Kenyans, then it is time that they must summon their conscience and listen to what Kenyans desire, what Kenyans want, what Kenyans are pushing for.
Will they really listen, Jarvis? That sounds like an ideal situation, but it's not an ideal situation.
I think it's a question of just choosing to embrace reality. Reality must throw its arms around our representatives, because so far it has not. And you see, the other unfortunate thing, as it has been known through our history, is that our politicians go into office for purposes of just enrichment. Some other made a very weird argument that you see once somebody has served as a member of parliament, they can no longer be employed anywhere. And that is why they need to have hefty pensions.
Why can they be employed anywhere? I would really want to just...
Well, basically, of course, the argument that holds is that having been politicians and cantankerous as they can be most of the time, no organization or institution would contain their big egos and the kind of lifestyle they are adjusted to. Oh, wow. Because, you know, they have to adjust it downwards to the realities of an institution. If that is the issue, how many people lose jobs?
Yeah.
And they have to struggle, go into business or look for another job, etc., or even start their own institutions.
Right.
We Kenyans must not be burdened by the appetites of our politicians. And that is why we request them to engage with reason. Before election, any election in this country, I remember even in the run-up to the 2007 elections, there was an organization called MOPA, some movement called MOPA, Movement for Political Accountability, that was trying to push parliamentarians to sign up.
Right.
And aspirants to sign up that they will not increase their salaries, that they will be contented with whatever has been put there, has been set, and that they will not adjust it upwards.
Okay.
But the moment they take oath of office, their memory leaves them completely.
Yeah.
And they become
new beings.
Other individuals that you wonder, one, whether it is the trappings of power, whether it's a question of trying to get comfortable with new status, etc.
All right.
But you see, service is not about overlordship.
Yes.
And humility must find its place within the operations and the character of our politicians and our leaders.
All right.
If that were to be the manner in which they want to walk upon this good earth, then we would not see such kind of proposals, you know, being made or presented to us by them. All
right, Javas, I hear you 100%. And I want to hear the thoughts of one Adams. Is calling us from Garissa. Good morning, Adams. What is your take on this, you know, proposed percentage, 700% increment?
Madam, it is very sad news to hear that the honorable members are now struggling to get 700% in the increase of their pension, while the lecturers are suffering and all other workers are suffering under the wage. So my contribution at this time round, it shows that when the member of parliament are now demanding the high increase of 700%, so they are just there in the parliament for representing on their wish, but not representing the normal Kenyans. So it is, I can even say it is a mood day for Kenyans, normal citizens like me, whereby mamambogas who are sitting on the street selling their own things to get their daily basis are suffering. So if there will be an increase of 700% in the pension of the retired MPs, it will also make increase of the life standard of normal Kenyans. So I say this needs something action to be done.
All right. Thank you very much, Adams, for your comment and for calling here on KTN News Center. I'd like also to hear the thoughts of one Zedekiah, who's joining us from Kericho. Zedekiah, good morning. What's your take on this issue? Zedekiah, if you can hear me, let me hear your thoughts about this new scheme by legislators to increase, you know, that percentage of their pension.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
All right, we seem to have lost him, but we'll get more calls. Of course, feel free to call us on the numbers on your screen. Let me hear your thoughts as a Kenyan, what you feel really about this new move by legislators to get basically more money. Java's coming to you. And, you know, of course, Kenyans have expressed their anger towards this, but is that all we can do?
Well, there is much more indeed we can do. Betty, we are 12 years away from the desired attainment of Vision 2030. Yet we are not yet even 50% of achieving Vision 2030 in Kenya today. Regardless of the midterm plans that are presented time and again, trying to give hope where there is actually none. We did not even achieve 50% of the Millennium Development Goals. Today, we have got the Social Development Goals that we are not even at 5% achievement. Money should be directed to such kind of causes, not being directed only to the pockets of a few individuals. And that is why Kenyans must gather in sufficient numbers. The only thing is that even when we have political meetings or rallies, it's not Kenyans who speak. It is the politicians
themselves
who speak to Kenyans and giving them direction and what they want. When we look at matters public participation, we must take public participation seriously. And unfortunately, when you go to barazas or meetings within villages and hamlets in this country, what has been guised as public participation, we get to have leaders come to speak to the people.
Yeah.
The people do not rise to speak on the issues that are of importance to them. We do not see people rising up to give priority areas or priority programs and developments to the leaders. And so we need to turn everything on its head.
Yeah.
So I think it behooves Kenyans to get sufficiently angry. And this agitation must not just have them get to express their anger on keyboards, etc., or through memes that circulate on social media and WhatsApp groups, etc. We need to have movements of people taking action. For example, by now, just by way of this information that has come to the public, we need to have people coalescing, starting conversations, whether it's online, offline, everywhere. And actually, that agitation should drive them, one, to stop this kind of unwelcome proposals. And secondly, to make sure that we put in place mechanisms, not just in policy, but even possibly in legislation, that such kind of unwelcome, and actually is an amusement at times such as this, that such kind of things should not happen. Not when we got a leadership and a government that has tried to demonstrate that they love Kenyans and they're doing everything in the interest and for the benefit of Kenyans.
All right, Josiah, I understand that you're joining us from Nairobi. Let me also hear your thoughts. What can you tell us? All right, Josiah, if you can hear me, thank you for calling us here on News Center. Talk to us about your thoughts, really, about our discussion this morning. All right, we seem to have also lost him, but thank you at least for making the effort to try and call us. Devas, I want to touch on something that you touched on, and that is the SRC and this thing to do with public participation. And one of the reasons that this particular proposal by SRC is in court right now and you're waiting for the final judgment is because that there was no public participation. But then how genuine is this public participation?
First of all,
does it even exist?
It's now about 5.5 years since the first election under the devolved system of government in 2013. And the whole term came and went. We didn't have a Public Participation Act at the national level. County governments across the country have made impressive effort to have public participation acts, and that's welcome. But the question arises, how is the public participation process or exercise going to be conducted? Because as I've cited a little earlier, this public participation is a question of calling villagers to come and sit and listen to politicians speak to them and impress them with whatever language that they want to use and promises that they want to offer. That is not the essence of public participation. Public participation necessitates that leaders and the led must come together as equals and share thoughts and come up with tangible proposals and then move forward with those proposals. For example, the term that ended before election, we had, for example, all county governments have the county integrated development plans. None has been audited to ask ourselves how far did the county government, for example, implement various projects for which money was allocated, what percentage of implementation remained, and how can that actually be absorbed or taken up by the next government, county government or county administration that comes in. At the national level still, the same thing. So this public participation mantra, which actually is being admired across East Africa and actually across the African continent, that Kenya is trailblazing on matters governance, is purely mouth deep. It's hot air. Because practically speaking, we are not having substantive public participation exercises where people rise and their voices are listened to. Because you will be surprised that many times, even when it comes to matters budgeting, whether it's at the county level or even national level, budgets are presented to the people, but the people's views are actually not taken into account.
Yes, yes.
Whatever the leadership wants is what actually will be taken to a county assembly or to the National Assembly, and that's what actually will pass. That's what will fly. That is disappointing.
Right. All right. Let me also get a few callers. I understand that we have one online. Please introduce yourself. All right. So you've just hung up right now. All right, Javas, just expanding the conversation to, you know, what you mentioned also about the executive seemingly having, you know, a great idea about how they want to run the next, you know, years before the 2022 elections. Talking about this issue to do with legacy, what is it that the president, you know, with his seemingly love for this country can do? Is there anything that he can do?
After the proposals by Sarah Serem team back then, the president spoke to it and actually seemed to back that proposal. And the question that we can ask ourselves right now, was there wisdom in the SRC commission the SRC team coming up with such kind of idea and proposals? Was there wisdom? Does it hold water? The answer is in the affirmative. And if some people are chagrined by such kind of proposal, then what counter proposal, what kind of alternative thought do they have? Is it a question of bleeding a leech consistently to fatten the heifer, yet the heifer is far bigger than the leech? Right now, we need to have leaders actually adhering and respecting institutions that have been mandated by, you know, by legal instruments and actually, by extension, by the people. So when a commission, for example, comes up with very welcome recommendations, and then we see sideshows and other people trying to fight it, then we know that their interests are actually departing from the interests, the genuine interests of the people. The other thing is this. We know that when it comes to matters of independence, yes, all these organizations or institutions need to carry out their duties. But the president or the executive can and should show leadership. And one thing we know in this country, by practice, is that if actually the president or the executive is against something, they will whip their members in parliament to go to toe the line. So right now,
there's some level
if
of
actually the truth is that the leadership of this country is against such kind of increments, if at all the leadership of this country is concerned about the ballooning wage bill, then they will take practical, reasonable measures to stop it. Otherwise, when we see this silence is speaking volumes. It is pregnant. It is promising twins. And those twins are going to further balloon the wage bill of this country.
All right, what would you tell legislators? You know, I'm sure some of them are watching, especially the ones who are supposed to be part of this show. What is it that, you know, on behalf of Kenyans, you tell them as we wind up this conversation?
You see, Betty, why is it that most parliamentarians will be enthused to come to discussions of rabble-rousing nature? If right now it was a question of whether we should go to a referendum or not, they would be falling over themselves to find a place on your show. But when it's a question of things that speak to conscience, they shy off. I think time has come where we need to have our members of parliament really rise to the occasion, to the duty of their times, and feel it exactly as Kenyans are feeling, that if we must feel with what Mama Mbogas are feeling, if at all we see, and like there was a case about a month ago of a certain journalist who is struggling to raise money to go for treatment abroad, if these things concern them, if widows and orphans who are still struggling with the yoke of matters, challenges of HIV and AIDS, and all such kind of stuff, if at all Kenyans are still struggling, especially farmers, with post-harvest rotting of their produce from the farms, poor roads, etc., and this does not prick the conscience of our leaders, then I think maybe they took up a wrong job. They need to go back to the terms of reference of their jobs.
All right. Thank you very much, Javas Bigambo there, telling it as it is, really something really to just, I don't even have words. It's honestly such a horrible situation. All right, we just want to take a look at some of your feedback here. So much actually coming in. Let's look at Odwori Victor. You say, I really disagree with the government. This is a time when we get the government who satisfy, we've gotten a government that only satisfy themselves, forgetting who they actually represent. Stephen Wambua, you say there should be a body set and enshrined in the Constitution to determine and control salaries for politicians, mostly members of Parliament. All right, Reese Benedict, you say, yes, we should suffer the most until we realize that our vote is our life. Before then, we have served them dinner, let them eat. Naya Kenya, you say that it is shameful that 50 years down the line, Kenya hasn't achieved any development goal because of poor leadership. The honorable greed will destroy this country. We have a collapsing health system and that needs financing. This money should be channeled here. Well, thank you very much for your comments. I'll keep them coming. I'll continue to sample them. We're talking about honorable greed. All right, as we continue with our show, let's just take a look at another story here. And police in Eldoret have intercepted a truck ferrying illicit brew. Here is Eldoret West OCPD Samuel Mutunga telling us about that.
He's supposed to be arraigned before the court. In 10 minutes' time, he'll be in the court. And that's Chair. Then is, I think, Bernard Chair. Bernard Chair is the suspect. Bernard Chair.
How much?
Yeah, I've said almost 3.5 million.
3.5 million.
3.5, I mean. Approximately. That's the local market. Maybe if he delivers somewhere else, maybe he gets more or less, I don't know, but market price, because as I've told you, this one is worth 50, local market here.
So you have arrested only one person?
I've arrested only one person in this operation because he was the one who was found and he belonged in the yote ni yake. Yes, also consistent. Of course, yes. There is a ban of following the paper and you'll be charged for that. But you see, some of these, they are just kind of, once you get this role, if you are not careful, he may tell you, I have only this one transporting, but just a concealment of what he is transporting, though it's not allowed. But it seems he has a repackaging in his yard. Thank you.
All right, now moving on, and heavy rains and floods have continued to interrupt learning activities in Kajiado County, with more than 10 schools temporarily closed and others recording pupils' low turn-up. Ongoing rains have swept bridges, making some schools inaccessible, while in some other schools, classes have been submerged. The Senior District Education Officer Elizabeth Otieno says there is a fear of a disease outbreak following the destruction of toilets by the floods. 1,000 families displaced in the area have been moved to safer ground.
Siku kuna mvua na mafuriko mengi, wanafunzi wanapata kuketi nyumbani na wazazi ili wasiweze kupotesha maisha yao kiholela holela. Wanaketi nyumbani bila kuhudhuria shule, na hayo maagizo yametoka katika wizara,
kwa sababu watoto wengi wetu hutoka nyumbani kila siku. Hatuna namna nyingine, itabidi tufunge shule kwa sababu hatuna namna ya kuleta watoto, na wazazi wetu wengi hufanya kazi Nairobi, kwa hivyo hawana uwezo wa kuleta watoto hapa. Tunasafirisha watoto kama 400 kila siku, na sio tu shule ya Acacia, hata zile shule ziko hapa katika neighborhood yetu. Shida tu ni ukarabati ambao ulifanywa na yule mtu alipewa contract ya kuunda barabara hiyo kwa sehemu kidogo, sehemu ya kama mita 300. Hiyo ni sehemu kidogo sana.
Now, the UN and Charity Alliance, Gavi, says the biggest cholera vaccine drive in history is underway in Africa, aimed at reining in the spate of outbreaks across the continent. More than 2 million people will receive the oral cholera vaccine as part of 5 major campaigns in Malawi, Nigeria, South Sudan, Uganda and Zambia. According to the UN Health Agency, cholera infects 1.3 million to 4 million people every year and kills an estimated 21,000 to 143,000, mainly in poor countries.
Most people on the planet don't realize that we're in the 7th pandemic of cholera, and it's been going for over 50, nearly 60 years, the longest pandemic in history. And despite all our technology and all our development, we still haven't come to terms with how to prevent and control cholera as a major threat.
We have experienced in Africa over the last 3 years an increase in the number of outbreaks of cholera in the region. And this is mainly due to the environmental change, political instability, rebellions across the continent, internal displaced camps, urbanization, rapid urbanization, creating slums around the big cities. Over the last 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, we have more than 752,000 cases of cholera reported in Africa, with more than 17,000 deaths.
We have the knowledge of how to control cholera. We have the tools to control cholera. We have a strategy with our partners in the Global Task Force, which includes our colleagues in UNICEF, IFRC, CDC, the Gates Foundation, and many others, as well as the countries that are affected. We have the partnership to do this. The real question is, do we have the collective will and commitment to do that over a decade?
Now, the mayor of Cape Town, South Africa's second largest city, was ousted by her own party on Tuesday after her administration came under fire over mismanagement and alleged corruption. Deputy chairperson of the Democratic Alliance's federal executive, Natasha Mason, told AFP that Patricia de Lille was no longer a member of the party. By being stripped of her Democratic Alliance membership, South Africa's largest opposition party, de Lille loses her 7-year position as mayor and on the city council as well. The embattled de Lille has vowed to legally contest her sacking.
My second one is just your response to...
My integrity and my name are things that I've worked very hard for more than 40 years in politics. And these are things I value more than anything else. Now, once again, the DA's desperation has led to them taking another shortcut to get rid of me before following due process.
So we cannot just listen from the one side of the story, and then we need to know from Patricia's point of view, what is it that happened to her and that made her to be fired.
Musuma Imane and the rest of the cabinet must take responsibility of the things they say she's responsible about doing. I mean, she can't be making decisions on her own.
All right, so we want to take a short break here on News Center, but we're coming back in a few minutes to continue with our second hour of the show. And when we come back, we'll be linking up with, among others, our reporter Elvis Koskei from Eldoret. He's going to be talking to us about some new developments there. That's happening in a few minutes. Don't go away.